The day I turned 18, my stepfather threw me out of the house with nothing but a trash bag full of my clothes. No money, no plan, no place to go. For the next few days, I slept wherever I could on park benches, at bus stops, and sometimes just on the cold ground. Every night I kept asking myself the same question. How did my life fall apart so quickly? Then one afternoon, I spent my last $5 on something nobody else wanted. A strange little Quonset hut made entirely of dry grass. It looked completely worthless. But that night, while I was lying inside trying to fall asleep, I heard a strange metal clink under the floor. When I started digging, I discovered something buried there, something that had been hidden years before I ever arrived. And what I found inside didn't just change my situation, it completely changed everything I thought I knew about my life. Hello everyone! Before we begin, make sure to subscribe to the channel and become part of our YouTube family. Don't forget to like this video, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is there. Now, let's get into the story. The day I turned 18 didn't feel like freedom. It felt like exile. Most people imagine their 18th birthday as a doorway into adulthood. Laughter, maybe a little fear mixed with excitement. Mine began with shouting echoing through the hallway and ended with a black trash bag thrown at my feet. "Pack your things," my stepfather said without even looking at me. "You're 18 now. You're not my responsibility anymore." At first, I thought he was joking. He had said cruel things before, but this felt different. My mother stood behind him, silent, her arms folded tightly, as if holding herself together. She avoided my eyes. "Where am I supposed to go?" I asked. He shrugged. "Not my problem." The words landed heavier than any punch. I packed slowly, hoping someone would stop me, hoping my mom would say something, anything. But the house stayed quiet, except for the sound of clothes being shoved into plastic. When I stepped outside, the door closed behind me with a final click that sounded louder than it should have. Just like that, I was homeless. The evening air felt colder than usual. I stood on the sidewalk, holding everything I owned, watching cars pass as if the world had decided to keep moving without me. I waited 10 minutes, then 20. Part of me believed the door would open again. It didn't. That night, I slept at a bus stop across town. The bench was hard, and every passing car made me wake up. I barely slept. Every sound felt dangerous. Every shadow looked like trouble waiting to happen. By morning, reality hit harder than hunger. I had no job, no savings, and nowhere to stay. The next few days blurred together. I walked endlessly, trying to look normal so people wouldn't notice I had nowhere to go. I washed my face in public restrooms and charged my dying phone. Whenever I found an outlet, hunger became a constant companion. At first, it was uncomfortable. Then it became painful. Eventually, it turned into a dull emptiness that followed me everywhere. I learned quickly how invisible people could become. Strangers avoided eye contact. Store owners watched me closely. People assumed things about you when you carried your life in a bag. One afternoon, while wandering near the outskirts of town, I followed a dirt road that led to an old rural flea market. It looked forgotten, rows of mismatched tents, rusted tools, broken furniture, and random objects nobody else wanted. Still, I walked through it slowly, partly curious, partly hoping someone might need help for a few dollars. An old man sat behind a folding table stacked with strange items, lanterns, cracked mirrors, and antique farming tools. His face was weathered, his beard gray and uneven. At the far edge of the market stood something unusual, a small, curved structure made entirely of dried grass and straw. It looked like a half-buried tunnel or a tiny bunker from another time. Pieces of straw stuck out unevenly, tied together with thin wire. Some sections were patched with old fabric. It didn't look safe. It barely looked real. A crooked wooden sign leaned against it. $5, take it or leave it. I laughed quietly to myself. $5 for a pile of grass. Still, something pulled me closer. "Ugly thing, isn't it?" the old man called out behind me. I turned. "Does anyone actually buy something like this?" He chuckled. "Been sitting here for years. Folks say it's useless." "What even is it?" "Quonset hut," he said. "Or someone's attempt at one." I walked around it. The structure was small, but solid enough to stand. Despite its rough appearance, the shape was carefully built. "Who made it?" I asked. The old man shrugged. "No idea. Showed up a long time ago. Owner never came back." I checked my pocket out of habit. $5. my last $5. Logic told me to save it for food, but food would only last one day. Shelter could last longer. I stared at the hut again. For the first time since being kicked out, I imagined having a place where I could close a door and not worry about being chased away. "Does it come with the land?" I asked. The old man nodded toward a small, empty patch nearby. "Nobody claims it. You keep it clean, nobody bothers you." I hesitated. This was ridiculous, but sleeping outside another night felt worse. I handed him the money. He studied me for a moment before taking it. "Sometimes," he said quietly, "the things nobody wants turn out to matter the most." I didn't understand what he meant then. As the sun began to set, I dragged my trash bag inside the grass hut. The straw walls rustled softly as I entered. Dust floated through beams of golden light. Inside, it was simple dirt floor, old straw piles, and a broken stool. But it was dry, and it was mine. I sat down, exhausted, listening to the wind brushing against the straw walls. For the first time in days, I felt safe enough to breathe deeply. That night, wrapped in my jacket, I lay staring at the curved ceiling. I thought about my childhood, about how quickly life had changed, about how alone I felt, but somewhere between exhaustion and sleep, another feeling appeared. Hope. I didn't know it yet, but buying that strange $5 hut was the moment my life quietly began to change. Because hidden beneath the dry grass floor was something waiting for me, something that had been there long before I ever arrived. And by morning, I would discover that the hut wasn't abandoned at all. It had been waiting. Morning arrived slowly, carried in by thin rays of sunlight slipping through the gaps in the straw walls. For a moment, I forgot where I was. The curved ceiling above me looked unfamiliar. Golden light flickering across it as the wind moved the dry grass outside. Then reality returned. I was alone in a grass hut I had bought for $5. But strangely, I didn't feel as hopeless as the days before. The air inside was warm, and for the first time in nearly a week, I had slept through the night without fear of being chased away. My stomach growled loudly, reminding me that comfort didn't mean survival. I had no money left, no food, and no plan. I sat up and looked around carefully, studying my new home. Up close, the hut felt different than it had from outside. The structure wasn't random at all. Every bundle of straw had been tightly packed and layered in a pattern, almost like someone had taken great care building it. Whoever made this hadn't been careless. I stood and stretched, brushing dirt from my clothes. As I moved, dust floated through the air, glowing in the sunlight. The hut smelled earthy, dry grass, mixed with something older, something forgotten. I decided to clean it. If this was going to be my shelter, it needed to feel livable, using a broken piece of wood, like a rake. I began pushing piles of straw into one corner. Old debris shifted across the dirt floor. Small stones rolled aside. Every movement filled the air with soft, rustling sounds. That's when I heard it. Clink. I froze. The sound was faint but sharp, metal striking something solid. I looked down at the straw near my feet. Slowly, I pushed it aside again. Clink. My heartbeat quickened. Carefully, I knelt and started digging with my hands. Straw scratched against my skin as I pulled layer after layer away. Beneath it, the dirt looked slightly darker, more compacted. Something was buried there. I cleared more dirt until my fingers hit cold metal. A corner. My breath caught. I dug faster, uncovering a small, rectangular box coated in rust and dust. It was heavy, heavier than it should have been for its size. For a long moment, I just stared at it. My mind raced with possibilities. Trash, tools, something worthless, or something important. I lifted it carefully and placed it on the ground. The lid had a tiny lock, but it was already broken, hanging loosely from one side. I hesitated. Opening it felt strangely personal, like stepping into someone else's story, but curiosity won. Slowly, I lifted the lid. The hinges creaked loudly in the quiet hut. Inside were old photographs tied together with a faded string, several folded papers, and a thick envelope. I picked up the photos first. They showed a younger man standing beside the very same hut, except back then it looked new, strong, and freshly built. Behind him were tall green fields instead of the dry patches surrounding it now. In another photo, the man was smiling while holding a... The child looked familiar. Too familiar. My chest tightened. The boy had the same eyes as me. I quickly dropped the photo back into the box. suddenly nervous, and moved my hands toward the envelope. It felt thick. When I opened it, my breath stopped. Cash. Real cash. Dozens of bills stacked tightly together. I stared in disbelief before pulling them out and counting slowly. 100, 200. My hands began shaking as the number climbed higher. $1,000, $2,000, $3,000. I fell back onto the dirt floor, stunned. $3,000 hidden inside a straw hut nobody wanted. For several minutes, I couldn't think. My brain struggled to understand what was happening. Just days ago, I had been sleeping on a bus bench, wondering how I would survive. Now, I held more money than I had ever seen in my life. But beneath the envelope was something else, a folded letter. The paper was old and yellowed, its edges slightly torn. My name was written across the front in careful handwriting. I froze. Not just my first name, my full name. A chill ran down my spine. How could someone have written this before I even found the hut? I slowly turned the letter over. Half expecting another surprise, nothing. Just the seal waiting to be broken. My fingers trembled as I opened it. The hut suddenly felt silent, as if even the wind had stopped to listen. The first line made my heart pound. If you are reading this, then life probably didn't go easy on you. I swallowed hard and kept reading. The writer spoke directly to me, describing struggle, loneliness, and the feeling of being unwanted. Every sentence felt painfully personal. It was impossible. No stranger could know these things. Halfway through the letter, my breathing slowed because I recognized the handwriting. Not perfectly, just a distant memory from childhood drawings and birthday cards long ago. At the bottom of the page was a name I hadn't spoken in years. My father. The man everyone said had abandoned us. The man I barely remembered. My vision blurred as emotions rushed through me. Confusion, anger, hope, disbelief, all crashing together. Why would his letter be here? Why hide money inside a hut made of grass? And how had he known I would find it? I looked around the small hut differently now. This wasn't random. This place had been built with purpose, and somehow it had been waiting for me. Outside, the wind picked up, brushing against the straw walls like whispers from the past. I held the letter tightly, realizing that whatever answers waited in the rest of those pages would change everything I believed about my life. I had bought the hut, thinking it was my last option. But now, it felt like the beginning of a mystery, left behind just for me, and for the first time. I was ready to learn the truth. I stared at the signature for a long time, unable to move. My father's name sat at the bottom of the letter as if it had been waiting years for my eyes to find it. The hut suddenly felt smaller, quieter, almost alive with memories I didn't understand. Growing up, I had only been told fragments about him. Some relatives said he left because he didn't care. Others avoided the topic entirely. My stepfather always called him a failure, a man who ran away from responsibility. But the letter, in my hands, told a different story before I had even finished reading it. I took a slow breath and continued. I never wanted to leave you, the letter said, but sometimes life forces choices that look like mistakes from the outside. My chest tightened. He explained that years ago, before my mother remarried, he had struggled financially. Jobs disappeared, debts grew, and eventually he lost nearly everything. The land where the hut stood was the only thing he managed to keep. A small, forgotten patch nobody else valued. So he built the Quonset hut himself, not from steel or concrete because he couldn't afford them, but from dry grass, straw, and whatever materials he could gather. He wrote about working late into the night, shaping every curve carefully so it would survive wind and rain. This place was meant to be a beginning, the letter read, a reminder that something strong can come from almost nothing. My eyes moved faster now. He explained that he had hidden money there slowly over time, small amounts saved whenever he could, hoping it would someday help me if life became difficult. If you are reading this, he wrote, then you probably needed help more than pride would allow you to ask. A tear fell onto the paper before I realized I was crying. The letter continued, revealing something I had never known. He hadn't disappeared willingly. He had gotten sick, very sick. Medical bills forced him to travel far away for treatment. And during that time, communication with my mother broke down completely. Misunderstandings turned into silence, and silence turned into separation. He wrote that he tried to come back once, years later, but saw my mother had remarried and believed my life might already be stable. I thought staying away might hurt less than returning and causing chaos. He admitted, I felt anger rise, not at him, but at the years of lies and half-truths that had shaped my childhood. Near the end of the letter, the tone changed, becoming softer and more personal. You might feel unwanted sometimes, he wrote. I felt that way too when I was young. But being unwanted by some people doesn't mean you have no place in the world. I looked around the hut again, the curved walls, the careful construction, the way sunlight warmed the space despite its fragile appearance. This wasn't just shelter, it was a message. The final paragraph made my hands tremble. I built this hut hoping you would one day stand inside it stronger than I ever was. Use what you find here not just to survive, but to build something better. Make this the place where your life begins again. The letter ended simply. I'm proud of you, even if I never get to say it in person. Silence filled the hut. Outside, birds chirped somewhere in the distance, and the morning breeze carried the scent of dry grass through the doorway. For the first time since being kicked out, I didn't feel abandoned. I felt chosen. I folded the letter carefully and held it against my chest. The anger and fear that had followed me for days slowly faded, replaced by something steadier purpose. This hut wasn't proof of how low my life had fallen. It was proof that someone had believed in my future long before I believed in it myself. I spent the rest of the day cleaning with new energy, reinforcing loose straw bundles, clearing the floor completely, and arranging the space into sections: a sleeping area, a small corner for cooking someday, and a spot near the entrance where sunlight stayed longest. Every movement felt meaningful. By evening, the hut looked different, still simple, still made of grass, but alive again. I sat outside watching the sunset paint the sky orange and purple. Cars passed far down the road, their distant sounds reminding me the world was still moving. But now I felt ready to move with it. The money meant I could buy food, maybe find temporary work, maybe even start saving for something bigger. But more important than the money was the realization growing inside me. I wasn't starting from nothing anymore. I had a foundation. Over the next few days, I bought basic supplies: bread, water, a small lantern, and cleaning tools. People at the flea market began recognizing me. Some nodded politely. One vendor even offered me small jobs helping carry items. Slowly, life began to stabilize. At night, I reread the letter again and again. Each time, different lines stood out, guiding me forward. Weeks later, I planted small patches of grass around the hut, repairing the land the way my father once had. Watching new green shoots push through the soil felt symbolic proof that growth could happen even after destruction. One evening, while sitting at the entrance, I realized something powerful. Being kicked out at 18 had felt like the end of my story, but it had actually pushed me toward the one place meant for me all along. The $5 hut everyone ignored became my first home, my first investment, and the first proof that my life could change. Years later, when people asked how I managed to rebuild my life from nothing, I always smiled before answering, because the truth sounded unbelievable. It started the day I was thrown out with a trash bag and bought a broken Quonset hut made of dry grass for $5. What I found inside didn't just give me money, it gave me direction. It gave me truth. And most importantly, it gave me a reason to believe that sometimes the things the world throws away are exactly the things meant to save us.